Hello class, in this video we're going to be looking at three different types of trade barriers. Okay, these are things that governments put in place to restrict free trade. Now the first trade barrier that I want to discuss is tariffs. Now a tariff is a tax on imports. Okay, a tax on imports. That means that if a country is going to bring goods or services in from another country, okay, they are going to place a tax on it. Okay, people will have to pay money to the government in order to bring that product into the country that they're importing it to. Okay, so it's additional money that a company or person will have to pay on an import being brought into a country. Okay, so we can see how this would prevent or reduce the amount of items being imported into a country. If people have to pay more for it, remember our discussion on supply and demand, less of that item will be demanded because of the higher price caused by the tax. Okay, so tariffs can be used for two main reasons. Number one is they can be used to generate money for a country. Okay, so think about it. If you're paying tariffs to a government, well, the government is getting additional money and they can use that money to provide goods and services or buy things for the people that are in the country that the items are being imported into. Okay, and the second way that tariffs can be used is to protect local companies. Okay, so the products that are being produced by the local companies, they don't have to pay tariffs because they're being produced in the country that they're going to be sold in. Okay, they're not being imported like the items that are produced in other countries. Okay, so we can see then that if the domestic or the local companies can produce at a lower price because they're not paying the tariffs that the foreign imported goods are being charged, well then people will be more inclined to buy from the local companies, okay? And that can help a domestic economy. So those are the two ways that tariffs can be used to achieve different goals depending on what a government is trying to do. Okay, so our second trade barrier is a quota. Now a quota, it limits either the quantity, okay, or the monetary value of an imported product. So let's assume that there is a quota placed on bicycles coming into the United States. The United States may say that, okay, we're putting a quota in place of only importing 200 bicycles. That would be an example of a quantity quota. The United States could also say that we are going to only import, $5,000 worth of bicycles. That is a monetary value placed on the imported product. Either example is the same. Okay, they both are quotas. Okay, it can be either the number of items, that's the quantity, okay, or they could say the dollar amount of the items being imported. Okay, now quotas can be used to help domestic countries. Those are the businesses that are in the country that the items are being imported into. Okay, and the reason for that is if you limit the amount of imports and there is demand above that quota amount, then the only option is for people to buy from the domestic countries that are producing that item. Okay, so let's say that in the United States, the demand for bicycles is 500 bicycles per year. Okay, and the United States has placed a quota of 200 bicycles per year from other countries. Okay, well the difference between 500 and 200, that's 300. That would be the additional bicycles that would have to be provided, okay, to consumers from domestic countries or domestic companies in the United States. Okay, so countries can also use quotas to help one another and improve relationships amongst one another. Okay, maybe there are certain industries that a country wants to help domestically. They can make an agreement from one of their major trade partners and say, look, we need to place a quota on this particular item for maybe a year, and that's going to help out our domestic countries or our domestic companies in our country. Okay, so then the country that is doing the imports may say, well, we'll do that for a year just because we want to keep the relationship good between our two countries. Quotas can be used in that manner as well. So now our third trade barrier is an embargo. Okay, an embargo is a total ban on a specific item coming into or leaving a country. Okay, so it's a complete shutdown of a particular item that is either being imported or exported. Now an embargo is the most restrictive, okay, or the most severe type of trade barrier. And they can be used for pretty much one of two ways. The first is a health reason. So if there is some potential risk out there that a country wants to protect itself against, okay, say there's a disease and it's not in a country right now, but if they continue to bring items into that country, they increase their risk that they will be exposed to whatever that risk is. Okay, so the country may say, we're shutting it down for this particular item for a particular period of time, none of it's coming in. Okay, an example of this was in the early 2000s. There was an outbreak of a disease called mad cow disease, and it infected cows, and there was the concern that this was going to be transferred to humans. Okay, it broke out in the United Kingdom. The United States placed a ban on beef coming into the United States from the United Kingdom to protect citizens against that potential health risk. Okay, another one, it might be political. If there's a country, okay, that one country doesn't agree with for, many different types of reasons. It could be political reasons, it could be economic reasons. But if there is a disagreement, they may choose to just stop trading with one another altogether and put an embargo on items coming in or out of a particular country. Okay, so Cuba and Vietnam, for many years we had bad relationships with those countries because they were communist countries and the United States was anti-communist. So we had complete embargoes or complete shutdowns of trade with Cuba and Vietnam for decades in our history. Okay, so those are two reasons why we would have an embargo in place. So our three trade barriers are tariffs, quotas, and embargoes. Okay, make sure that you understand all three and how they're different from one another, and go ahead and move on with the lesson.